All right. Classism, by definition, is the prejudice against or in favor of people belonging to a particular social class. Classism is present in all sorts of occupations and is apparent in education. According to the Howard Law Journal, high school students from low socioeconomic status families less frequently plan to attend college, less frequently do attend college, and then when they do, they less frequently attend four-year or more prestigious colleges. When the students from these low income families attend college, Linda R. Weiss and Cynthia H. Brock points out that these low income families report low levels of satisfaction due to not having time for social activities as they have part time jobs in order to pay for these colleges. Also stated in the Howard Law Journal, the upper class people are, by cultural definition, intelligent. Children who come from an upper class family enjoy the benefits of inordinate cultural and educational resources. By adulthood, virtually all demonstrate learned social and verbal skills and an awareness of the world commonly associated with intelligence. Uh, Here we will go through some of the terms related to classism. First, we will start off with class. A class is a part of a system of ordering a society in which people are divided into sets based on perceived social or economic status. According to Omid Talibi Rezabadi, social classes are often divided into three broad categories: the upper class, composed by the richest and most influential people in society; the middle class, which consists of ordinary people, such as those involved in academics and managers; and then the lower classes, which are made up of the people who lack the bare necessities of life. The next term we have here is poverty. Poverty is the state of being extremely poor. This term is used often to describe the lower class. The next term is class mobility, which is the movement of individuals, families, households, or other categories of people within or between social strata in a society. A change in social class is called vertical mobility, which either involves upward or downward mobility. A fast food worker who then becomes a wealthy businessman is an example of upward mobility in the class system. The last term is generational wealth, and generational wealth represents assets passed down from one generation to the next. Examples of these assets can include real estate, stock market investments, businesses, or anything else which contains monetary value.
Moving on to a description and talking about the historical information of classism, economic inequality, class mobility, and economic mobility are only weakly linked, according to Florian R. Hurdle and Olaf Gross Sandberg. They say that because classism is objective, because it's more of a spectrum of wealth to poor, there are no defining lines per se. It all has to do with what is called the chicken or the egg theory. Are you in an economic disadvantage because of other factors such as age, race, or sex, or is it because of the mobility that isn't afforded to you? There's research that supports both sides, research that supports neither, and research that supports other theories. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, it just means that when describing it, it's difficult, especially when talking about social sciences. Moving on to history, Melanie Bertrand and others talk about the abundant history of segregation in school districts, which can be tied back to classism. More specifically, through Michael B. Catt's discussion that in the 19th century classes were capital and labor. The later was known as a permanent working class. So back then, there are no middle classes, and because of this, they were able to draw distinctions between the classes that we are unable to do today. Also because they were able to define the differences of wage versus salary. A salary meant that you had to work for at least a year, while wages represented uncertainty. Katz later goes on to say that the Jacksonian politics in the 19th century allowed there to be social mobility between, creating the middle class. Their classes looked a bit different than ours today in the mid-19th centuries. They have three classes because of the increase of the capitalist economy: the business class, a working class, and an artisan class, which was basically someone who owned a business, a laborer, and someone who provided a service. Katz believed that this is due to the almost all major cities by the 1871 were capitalist industry cities.
The most prevalent form of classism in our society today is how unequal access to education affects social mobility. According to Florian R. Hertel and Olaf Grohl-Sandberg, results have been largely inconclusive about whether solely income inequality affects class mobility. Rather, a Robert Erickson and John H. Goldthorpe study found that hierarchical barriers, class inheritance, sectoral boundaries, and affinity or affinity between specific origin and destination classes had more of an impact. Therefore, factors like ability to accrue generational wealth and inheritance and national origin reception in a certain region all affect social class. Omid Talebi-Rezavadi also speaks on the social aspect of the term social class by elaborating on the social anxiety that can be related to the social norms and role expectations that come with culture and socioeconomic status. This statement helps to iterate the connection between economics and social aspects in the lives of people. Cheryl Bassani also asserts how important social capital is in the well-being of students in terms of their feelings of security in the classroom. This ability to feel secure and make connections is a product of class, as they are often the result of generational compounding of social and economic capital afforded to students of higher social class. The Hertel and Grohl-Sandberg cross-sectional review also found that government assistance also is a determinant of social mobility in terms of ability to move up the ladder with more education. In other words, welfare programs allow for secondary education to have more of an effect on social mobility. This previous conclusion reveals just how intersectional education is. According to Carl A. Grant and Elizabeth Sweer, multiple studies focusing on academic achievement scores along different identifiers or identity axes concluded that race, ethnicity, and social class all had an impact on scores. These conclusions demonstrate that social class impacts education and academic development. On the subject of how social class affects education, Melanie Bertrand states that predominantly white and middle-class schools are less likely to employ unqualified and inexperienced teachers than schools serving students of color or working-class students. The advantages that middle-class children experience again provide evidence of classism affecting the classroom. Bertrand also asserts that working-class students and students of ethnic backgrounds have a lower accessibility rate to good curriculum and school counselors and a higher rate of overcrowding, that schools with more minority students are less likely to have advanced or college-level classes, and finally that school districts within areas of poverty get taxes from impoverished neighborhoods, meaning less funding. These class differences create educational disparities between students from higher socioeconomic classes and those from lower socioeconomic classes. These educational disparities affect educational quality, therefore affecting metrics like test scores that further affect government funding for the school and individual student likelihood to attend higher education institutions. This is corroborated by Linda R. Weiss's assertion that students from higher income families are often pushed towards academic readiness, and quote, FAIR test from 2013-2015 data shows that US students from a family income level of $20,000 or less averaged 445 on recent SAT mathematics scores, and students from a family income level of more than $200,000 averaged 587. This difference in average scores demonstrates that there is a potential inequality between socioeconomic classes that needs to be addressed.
To resolve classism in general, according to Esping-Anderson, we need to start with redistribution strategies for things that have to do with class, like taxes and social security contributions, etc. In this presentation, and when researching classism, we focused a lot on how it went hand in hand with education. Dupree and Grusky pointed out how important it is to have equal opportunities, especially when it comes to education. Implementing things like anti-discrimination laws and rules will help with social mobility and can help make sure that each child gets a fair shot. Continuing on with classism in education, according to Carl A. Grant and Elizabeth Sweer, intersectionality should be taught to teachers. According to Linda R. Weiss, Cynthia H. Brock, teachers don't always understand the different circumstances each child is in the background they are coming from. This can make a big impact on how a child learns. Teachers also don't know how to address diversity in the classroom. Grant and Zier back up the statement by saying that they may need to adjust the curriculum so they can meet the needs of each student so they each can be successful. Florian R. Hurdle and Olaf Graf Sandberg discuss how kids are more likely to move social classes with help from their parents. But if their parents didn't have proper education either, then they are just stuck in a cycle. Therefore, providing children with equal opportunities, especially in education, is a good place to start. Having a proper education may create opportunities that don't just affect their jobs and their future, but also their children's and grandchildren's too. Thank you for listening.
Okay, and then here is our works cited page.